Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and today my guest is, I say this a lot, and so forgive me, but it's always so true. It's someone who's super special to me, who I've known for several years at this point. And I'm just so excited to introduce you to her. So her name is Hayden Orme, and she is the founder and CEO of Handled by Hayden and Co. And she's, an international speaker, two-time best-selling author. And if this is my favorite part about you, Hayden, right? I love this. You're a 50-ton master merchant mariner captain. So she knows the sea and sailing and so much. That's where if you look at any of her background stuff, branding, it's all about the ocean. I love it. She is actually the owner of an executive assistant firm, and we're going to get into why that's so pertinent. And Hayden, you were the, executive assistant to the CEO of a gigantic company for a long time. And that's also one of the things that led to our topic today, which is talking about burnout and how do we I want to say, how do we avoid burnout? I don't feel like that's the right way to put it, but when you start to notice yourself moving into and experiencing burnout, what do you do? Especially as a business owner, right? We both support business owners and see this a ton. So Hayden, thank you so much for being here on the podcast with me. I'm so excited to just get to have this conversation with you, and just like talk about all this stuff for an hour. And yeah, tell us more about your background, who you are, who you supported in the past, and who you support now.
Yeah, well, thanks, Hannah, for having me. I'm also really excited to be here. Like you said, I own an executive assistant firm, and my history actually is in corporate as an executive assistant. And for over a decade, I was in the C-suite supporting top leaders in various top Fortune companies. And my most recent position was actually supporting the chairman and CEO of the McKesson Corporation, which at the time was a Fortune 5 company, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And he was also the highest paid CEO in the United States. So as you can imagine, had a very full schedule myself. And while I enjoyed the work, it never felt quite fully aligned for me. And I remember this moment. There was actually a real turning point for me when I just remember sitting in my corner office looking out over the harbor, and I was looking down over these beautiful yachts that were tied up at the marina that was at the base of the building. And I remember thinking, being a sailor and passionate about the ocean myself, I remember thinking, there's got to be something more than this. I am working so hard and making good money, but I don't have the time to really enjoy my life anymore. And I don't have that balance or alignment within myself in relation to my work. And I don't have that life that I want to have where I can work and also, that kind of cliche work-life balance really was just sort of laughable in my situation that there wasn't a balance. So I remember starting to think, well, I really would love to work for myself, but I don't really know what and how to do that. Where do I even start? Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. I think it's sort of in my blood. And then I was actually presented with this opportunity. The CEO who I supported, he was retiring, and they gave me quite a long runway of notice, and they asked me to stay on to support through the transition. And they said, well, we can either relocate you again across country. I'd been relocated twice across country in 3 years, or we can give you a severance and you can leave. So I thought, oh, this is my chance on a silver platter. I took the severance and I decided that I needed to take a few months off, but I didn't. It was in that transition that I realized I was living in chronic burnout. I knew the term, but I hadn't really identified from a place where I could step back at this point and see the symptoms. I started to go through like withdrawal symptoms almost. I'd have panic attacks. I'd wake up in cold sweats. I'd be checking my phone. I'd have nightmares that I missed a call from my CEO or I didn't reroute the jet or something like that, at 3 a.m. And I was consumed with anxiety and I had been so programmed. Now you have to be successful. Executive assistants at that level, you are quite literally on call 24/7, 365. So that goes with the territory. But to be in that position where I was very consciously aware of what that chronic burnout had done to my body, my mental health, my emotional health, just everything holistically to me as a person, I really started to get clarity on what I wanted to do next. And that was help entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders actualize their own version of success with the right support in place and do that in a way that was sustainable
Mhm.
and honoring both the personal and the professional. And so that's why I started Handled by Hayden and Company because, and I can get into this later, but we are an executive assistant agency that employs career executive assistants. So I can differentiate from a virtual assistant, but it really is bringing that caliber of support and making it available to leaders anywhere from part-time to dedicated full-time and anything in between, but really honoring the personal and the professional. And I feel very strongly that change starts at the top within organizations. So if we can support our leaders in leading from a place of better balance and alignment and honoring who they are, how they work, their style, and that would have a trickle down effect
Mhm.
and help to start to shift the culture and the paradigm we have around burnout. I think it's been really normalized as a society and even celebrated in a way as a status symbol. Like you hustle, you grind, you do it all. And, we have these headlines, look at her, how does she do it all? And we don't honor the person and recognize that we can do anything but not everything. And it does take help. It does take support. And so that's really that's really my mission is to change the world one leader at a time by really helping them find balance and alignment in their life and their business again.
It's so important, and I think we are actually seeing a shift, kind of a cultural shift. I think, in European countries, they've known this for a long time, right? Like they'll take an entire month off or, be um, given 12 weeks of vacation right upon, like as soon as they're hired, right? Like
Yeah.
there is more balance there, but especially in the United States,
Mhm.
there are other cultures as well. I know, Japanese work culture is same if not worse, with regards to how much people are expected to work. But in American culture, for sure, we are absolutely ingrained from the time we're children, right? That's what you're supposed to do is work hard and keep
Yep.
working and grind. And I'm seeing more people waking up to this fact
Mhm.
that like that's not what life is about. And it's also not like, oh, well, I have to work less, have more work life balance, and then like uh, not have the resources that I need. Like, no, we're allowed to have prosperity and abundance and time. We're allowed to
Yes.
have the money and the time. Like,
Yes.
it's okay.
We can have it all.
We can't in that regard. Yes. Yes, we can. And I love that. I mean, I feel like we're so um our messages are so compatible in that way, right? In the way we do our work. The example I wanted to share from my world, from what you were saying about like how it's glorified, really
Mhm,
was that when I worked for the firm before I launched X Squared, so from 2007 till 2021, or end of 2020, really, it was like the advisors were, on, like 10 p.m. finishing emails, like get the kids to bed and then hop back on and do more work. And there was like that was literally um celebrated and, pat on the back.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like I see that you responded to this email at 11 p.m. Like good job.
Yep.
And, there was a piece that was just like, "Oh, okay, like, yeah, I can do that. I have the
Mhm.
energy for that. I can," um, but it was, what do I wanna say? When when the passion for that went out, when the light went out in a couple of other ways, this is what I'll say. There's like I feel like there's a time and a place for the excitement of, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you do want to like you can't think about anything else and you're excited about a project and you're ready to go. And I have no problem with that. Yes, go 16 hours a day on the thing that you're like so super lit up about. But when it's time to rest, you need to listen to your body and rest. And that was the thing that was like there was no room for rest, and there was no room for, when things weren't going well. And like
Yeah.
I said, for me, it was like a light went out inside of me, that now it went from, okay, I'm excited about this, to now I have to, and it's expected of me. And for me, that was also where, the panic attacks
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the extreme burnout. I've told this story before, but this feeling of I literally can't, I can't keep going with this. My family, the work would be better off without me. Like I started
Mhm.
having like suicidal ideation
Mhm.
thoughts coming up. And I had that, like, thankfully, I knew myself well enough by then to like hear those thoughts and go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not
Mhm.
actually me.
Mhm.
It's not actually me. What do I need to do to come back from this brink that I'm feeling? Um, and in creating X Squared and launching my firm, that was a big thing. It was like the passion was there. I worked a lot. I worked a lot of hours. But again,
Yeah, of course.
it was for me. It was for my family. It was, getting to work in the way that was exciting to me. And I've been able to then, over time, we can get into more examples too, but find like, okay, now this thing is getting to be too much. Who can I bring in to support me in,
Yes.
here? And like, okay, there's this thing, who can support me here? Right. Like
Mhm.
uh, creating that balance, by bringing in support for the things that I know I want done, but can't do myself.
Yes. Or shouldn't do yourself to optimize your time. And that's something that we address in bringing in the right support. It alleviates the things from your plate that somebody else can do, another expert can do, and probably more efficiently and effectively because that's their area of expertise. So the goal is to elevate and optimize your time so you're focused on the things that only you can do. And also, those things are going to bring you greater joy and satisfaction, but that is going to demonstrate an ROI in your business pretty quickly when your time as a leader is optimized and you have some time back to actually live your life.
Yes. Yes.
That's life changing.
Yes, and I wonder if you've experienced something similar, but I have literally experienced this, like, multiple times. I can think of the different times that I've taken actual downtime for myself and had inquiries come in from referrals, from, um, just from online, from, like, "Oh, I saw," "I was searching for exactly, what you do, and I found you." Like, inbound stuff coming in while I'm resting.
Mhm.
Like, more so than
Absolutely.
usual, like, right? And, like,
Yeah.
"Wait a second, I wasn't, like, pushing hard, um, for this." So, tell us a little bit more about that, like, what's that experience been like for you?
Oh, I have a great example, actually very recently. So, and I'll preface by saying this, we're business owners. We are going through everything too. If we're not going through it now, we've been through it. We're sort of, boots on the ground with everyone else. So when I speak about things that have been helpful or things that I recommend, it's because I've done them and benefited from them. So I definitely have to keep myself in check, and my team helps as well, because that corporate conditioning is so ingrained. And I'm just sort of that type A person anyway. So I can very easily fall into that, oh, I'll work late to get this done because I'm excited about it. But I can start to teeter on, well, I'm feeling really drained or I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so recently, so I have a proclivity for sort of trying to push through. So I have to keep that in check very actively myself. And recently, um, quite, quite literally, I was smacked into our wonderful dog. But she's still, at the time, she was like basically still a puppy. Our large dog ran right into my knee. I was outside playing ball, throwing the ball for her. She ran right into my knee. I heard and felt the pop, totally ruptured my ACL. It was a confluence of events with a lot of other things going on. And I was struggling to stay on top of my work, not sleeping. I was in a lot of pain for a few weeks. And then I realized, why am I pushing myself like this? I'm not showing up for work in a good place. I'm canceling calls on people and rescheduling. Like, this is not how I want to show up for my business or myself or my team, my clients, my anything. So I made a really intentional choice. First, I took a week off. Then I cut my hours back for about 5 weeks to 3 days a week. And I was really, really good about holding that boundary. And in that time, I went to a spiritual retreat for 4 days. I did a lot of things for myself that just filled my proverbial cup. I went and sat by the ocean with a book. I visited family. I visited friends. I slept. My physical therapist calls it sleep hygiene. She's like, "You're doing really well with your sleep hygiene."
Love that
I
term.
had a Yeah, I had a bedtime. I meditated. Like, I did so many things, but I spent time with friends. And in that time, I started seeing this flood of new referrals. I was literally driving back from this retreat and my phone started ringing and it was referrals coming in. And I realized that that could never have happened in corporate, right? I could never have said, well, I need to take care of myself and cut my time in half. But in doing so, I was showing up for my business with a different energy, from feeling happier, feeling more grounded. I was more rested. Just energetically, I was able to shift things in a more positive direction, and that vibration had a ripple effect through everything, and it really shifted things for my business, things for me. And so it was a reminder that, okay, when I start to hit that burnout place, I need to be aware of it, but I am more aware now, and it's okay. And it's actually in my best interest as a leader and a business owner. It's in the best interest of my business if I take care of myself. I leaned on my assistant. I leaned on my team. They're phenomenal. They are reliable and trustworthy and credible. And we really were able to thrive in that period. And it was just a reminder that, I have like a visceral reaction to the words hustle and grind. Like when I start to slide into, well, I'm just going to push through. And sometimes you have to, right? Like sometimes there's a deadline, or sometimes, we all have things, but that shouldn't be the norm. Those should be the exceptions.
Mhm.
And so I have to remind myself of that sometimes, that, okay, I've had a few really, really intense weeks or even really intense months. And sometimes it's for good things, right? Sometimes business is booming, and right now we're recruiting and hiring and we're growing. And I truly believe that is because that's still a ripple effect of me taking the time off and investing in myself as a leader and coming back to the business from a place of more abundance.
Mm. That that story, I think the main impact of that, or the main lesson even, is that, I mean, you talk about burnout. You teach people how to find and get the support they need to not experience burnout. And I think the lesson there is that it's not something, I think you said it best before. It's not a set it and forget it. It's not a, "Oh, I learned
Yeah,
about this, and so now it's not gonna happen anymore."
right.
Right? It's something that, um, we still practice. Literally, like, practice
Yes.
as in, "Oh, I'm experiencing shades of this. I'm going to
Yes.
notice it. I'm gonna stop, and
Yes.
I'm going to make a non-burnout decision." But it doesn't mean you don't start, like, if it's a 1 to 10, it doesn't mean that you're never gonna experience those first, like, 4 or 5 steps again and be like, "Oh, no,
Truly.
let's go back."
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, that made me think of a quote that I say this a lot. Being an empowered leader isn't a final destination; it's a daily practice,
Mhm,
and it truly is. I mean, you have to keep right. You can have a destination, and there's a million different routes to get there. So by recalibrating, sort of as you hit each waypoint, to use a little nautical terminology, which I love to do, um, it there's no right or wrong route. It's going to take you through different experiences, but you're going to get there. And actually, a lot of the times I found that in changing the path and changing the journey and changing the route, um, I often end up at a different place, but a place where I found feels more aligned because
mhm,
I'm learning along the way. So I actually had this idea for a new service and I was really excited about it. But then as I was going through this reduced time, reduced hours, I realized that it actually didn't really feel aligned. I was coming up with that idea from a place of maybe more, even more desperation. Like I felt
mhm,
like I needed to do something new, but I didn't. I love our core services. I love what I do. And I really needed to take care of me. So I was kind of looking for a fix to my approaching burnout, but it really was just needing to take care of me.
mhm, mhm. The example that keeps coming up for me, especially, like, springboarding off of that one, that you mentioned, is actually, like, this podcast. And I originally I started this back in 2022, so, like, January, I think, of 2022. And because I was having conversations with people that were so fun, that were so cool, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we should have recorded that." Like,
Mhm.
that just kept happening over and over again, so I was like, "Well,
I think we've said that a few times too.
Right, we've had conversations like, "Dang it, well, that would need to be recorded." Here we are now. but that was the impetus for starting, recording and putting it on YouTube, and um this sense of like a passion for something, an excitement for something. And I was having like awesome people come on and all of that. But then in 2023, I had like 5 or 6 episodes like recorded, done, but I had to produce them because I was doing it all myself, on top of growing X squared, on top of growing expansive CEO and the offerings that, were, like, exciting there, and I just couldn't. I had these beautiful conversations that I wanted to get out, and I had been meaning to hire an assistant for at least 6 months. I had known that I needed someone, but and here's where it's, like, super interesting. For me, I wanted it to be perfect. I thought I needed to be able to hire someone full-time. Like, I gotta find a full-time assistant. There's so many things I have to do to make that happen, and I need to be I need to have more revenue to make sure that that's gonna be okay. And, um I just, I was putting the brakes on myself because I thought I had to have someone full time.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was like desperate, not I'm not going to get these podcasts out. I have so much other stuff. I knew there was a person that I know her, like she is local to me, that does what I wanted to do. And I had the intuitive hit that I wanted to ask her for months.
Yeah.
And, of course, Svetlana's gonna listen to this because she listens to all the podcasts and produces them. Thank you, Svetlana. Um,
And she's
but
amazing.
she is amazing, and I mean, that was my kick, was like, I am not gonna be able to do the things that I really wanna do on my own anymore. It's too much. It's too heavy. I'm too tired. I was staying up, like,
Yeah.
working again, like 60, 70 hours a week.
Right.
And, like, it's not where I want to be. That's not what I wanna experience. That's not how I wanna spend all of my time.
Yeah.
And to your point of, like, someone can do it better than you, Svetlana came in, she's like, "Oh, yeah, I've done podcasts before. Just give it to me."
Mhm.
And once she figured out, like, the process, she's like, "Yeah, it takes me, like, 15 minutes." It's like, "Oh my god."
Well, that was probably, that really hits the nail on the head. Someone for whom that's their career, that's their area of expertise. They can do things so much more efficiently
Mhm.
than us, right? We're
Yeah.
we're we're trying to figure it out and cobble things together. It could take hours. And there's an opportunity cost there.
Yeah.
Apart from our our life, our time within our life and our family, and taking us away from hobbies and things we love and family time and sleep. There's an opportunity cost. So your time that you're spending on this could be also billable time, right? So it's lost
Yeah.
revenue. So oftentimes when I calculate the opportunity cost for clients, it's very, very high. Really small, even solopreneurs, usually it's in the several hundred thousands. And so bringing on someone like you learned, you can bring someone on part-time, and we do that. So I employ very seasoned executive assistants. They've all been in corporate. They have that experience. They've been in the C-suite supporting C-suite leaders, and they too have made the intentional choice to leave. And we work with clients anywhere from a handful of hours per week, 5 hours a week is our minimum, up to dedicated full time, but anything in between. So we work on monthly retainers, but it's up to X amount of hours per week. And a lot of our clients start with 5 or 10 hours a week, and they find that is pivotal for them. I mean, that's really the turning point where I love using this example because apart from being one of my favorite clients, it really encapsulates the benefit. I think she started with 5 hours a week and then increased her time, her retainer time. But She came to us just so burned out, this business owner. She had a team of, I think, 5 people, been in business for 20 years, very successful. But she said, I can't get past this plateau. And she was just so burned out. She said, I'm at the period in my life where I want to be enjoying myself more. I've worked really hard and I just work all the time. I am completely stressed. I mean, she really truly was burned out. And a few months into working with her phenomenal executive assistant, she sent me this email and she said, I've booked a trip to Italy. I'm spending consistent time every week with my granddaughter, which was something she wanted to do, but never had the time to commit on a consistent basis. And she said, and I'm making my own nut butter. So that's something she wanted to do. That's just an example because minimum time with an expert in that field had such a ripple effect through her business and her life because an executive assistant that's seasoned like that, they manage up. So I talk about managing up a lot, but they make recommendations too, how to optimize your time. And it's so it's really sad that statistically leaders have a higher rate of mortality, disease, suicide, because burnout is so prevalent. And I talk about chronic burnout and chronic overwhelm. And it doesn't have to be that way. So, I changing the world one leader at a time is really what we want to do. But I've had people on discovery calls in tears, just sobbing because they're desperate, like they're on the precipice of either closing their business or they're on the precipice of a divorce, or I mean, their life is in shambles because their business is running them. And then they start working with us. And I also can provide some strategic consulting.
Mhm.
And I do that in collaboration with them and their executive assistant. And it really turns things around. And once, like my example, they can start to cut back a little and breathe and come up for air, their business has an entirely different trajectory, as does their life. And oftentimes, speaking from experience, the business owner is the bottleneck. We
Yeah.
have to be able to be vulnerable and accept help, which is very, very hard. And so we really hold space and honor that. It takes incredible trust and vulnerability to open up your business and accept help. And it also it's a sign of incredible strength to be able to do that. And that is usually where you will see your business really start to thrive. And I had a discovery call with a business owner a few years ago, and she said she was working with a coach, and her coach had told her, well, you can't hire an assistant until you're making 500,000 a year in revenue. And
Yikes.
I said, okay, well, what's behind that number? She said, that's just what she told me. And I said, okay, well, how many years have you been working towards that number? She said, 8. And she was so burned out, talking about divorce, talking about closing her business. And she was phenomenal at what she did. And she brought on help. Her business is thriving. I know her, like her life has changed and she's just so happy. And it's amazing what that support can do because, like I mentioned earlier, when you are really optimizing your time, right, you're not spending hours anymore producing your podcasts and your assistant's spending 15 minutes doing it.
Right?
And those hours are either repurposed, or they are repurposed intentionally, but either doing things you love, spending time with your family, and focusing on your business. So your business grows, and we don't focus on the revenue, but the byproduct, as I say, is increased revenue.
Yeah.
And the goal is to have happier, more fulfilled leaders. And then that has a ripple effect through, for your clients, they're having a better client experience, your team is happier. I mean, it's a win-win.
Well, yeah, as you were telling that story, like, all I could think of was like, man, that woman could have benefited from, like, a financial analysis too. Like, is to
Yeah.
just take that at face value and not look at the truth of the
Yeah.
financials underneath it. Like, oh, if you spend, you know, $2,000 a month, which is $24,000 a year, you could actually get a ton of stuff off your plate. Right?
Mhm.
Just as an example, it could be more than that or less than that, whatever, but, like, to, like, just put and I'm, like, coming back to that because other people get that kind of advice,
Yes. And
right? They
it's so detrimental to their well-being and their business.
Yeah, and it's not there's no the thing like, the financial markers, um that kind of get thrown around, or people who just want to make 7 figures, right? I just want that
Right.
7-figure business. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about what that means. How much do you
Mhm.
want to pay yourself? How much do your employees cost? What's the cost of doing business for you? Are you actually making like, because it's not about the top line revenue number, it's about
Mm.
what you're able to pay yourself and the profit that you're making, right? Like, that's if it takes $900,000 to make 1,000,000, you're not coming away with very much.
Yeah,
You could spend a lot less time and effort just to make $100,000 that doesn't cost you almost nothing, right?
exactly.
And so, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, I think, but it comes back to that same piece of like, "Hey, let's actually, like, take a holistic look at your situation to see
Yes.
where the right supports are, what's going to actually benefit you and your business. I can't imagine. And at the same time, literally saying that out loud, I'm like, I didn't hire Svetlana at first because I thought I needed a full-time assistant and that I was gonna have to spend like at least 60 grand a year.
Mhm.
I'm not fully a solopreneur. I have support,
Mhm.
in other ways as well, but, like, I'm the only one making revenue for myself.
Right.
So I am, when you say the bottleneck, yep, that's me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I am the revenue driver of my business. Um, so that I was putting that false limit on myself. Like, well, I wanna be able to pay someone well. I wanna be able to, I'm not looking to, um, get the cheapest option on Fiverr or,
Right.
something like that. I
Right.
need I need someone who can actually and I think this is where, like, your team in particular also does an amazing job. Like, I need someone who can actually take stuff off my plate that
Yes.
I like, all I have to do is, like, glance it over and be like, "Yeah, that's great, thanks."
Yes. Be a truly strategic business partner.
Right.
And you can trust, you trust Svetlana, and that is really our differentiator, is because of our expertise that only comes with years and years. I mean, there's nobody on my team that has less than 10 years experience as a executive assistant. And so they can come in and make recommendations, and they're not, while this support is typically provided remotely, virtually, they're not just checking off a task list, they're not just taking care of repetitive tasks, they're really being a collaborative partner and managing up and holding you accountable. Like, Hannah, why are you doing that? I can take care of that for you. You spend that hour, you know, doing client outreach or something that is going to be a revenue generating activity. And I think that this example just popped into my mind. I was working when she became a client, but when I was having our discovery call, I was talking to her about, and she said she has little kids, and she often, like we mentioned before, which is very common, she kind of works until like 6 o'clock. They have family dinner and then she's back online at 8, and she works until 10, 11, 12 at night. It's effective, right? That has an effect on your life, your relationship, your health, your wellness, everything. And so we calculated, based on her billable time, the the cost of inaction for her to not bring on help And basically, that opportunity cost was around 300,000. So I said, well, would you rather write a check for around 300,000 a year or like 30,000 a year? The latter makes a lot more sense. So she started working with an executive assistant who was able to reduce the amount of time she was working. She was able to increase her revenue because she was putting in more billable, more focused billable time,
Mhm.
not doing all the busy work. Um, they actually, she she was making more money. They started to renovate their house that they had bought. She was, her executive assistant was building SOPs, workflows, set her up with a CRM, was following up with clients, able to be client facing, right? At this level, that's just part of the role, really being the true gatekeeper for you as the leader in all things.
Yeah.
And so when you do take time off, when you do step away, you have that trusted partner upon whom you can fully rely to keep the momentum going. So it's not like it really does support that balance that we talked about because you can take that time off. And inevitably, I couldn't work 3 days a week indefinitely. My business isn't at that point yet, but I could do that for a short period of time and trust that my assistant and my staff, they kept the momentum going, and they truly did. So at that level, it all works synergistically together to, keep the ship moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's such a differentiator for us between an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, but having that level of expertise,
Mhm.
it, I love the example, 15 minutes to produce your podcast. I mean, that is really truly an amazing example because so many clients will say, oh, well, I've been trying to work on this, but I've been spending weeks on it and I can't figure it out. And statistically, the average business owner loses 16 hours a week without support
Mm.
to administrative and operational tasks. That's an average, can be a lot higher.
Yeah.
And so people will often say, well, I can't afford 16 hours of retainer support. And that's just it. It's not apples to apples. You don't have to. A lot of times, 5 to 8 hours, maybe even 10, if you really want to go past your goals, will make such an impact because the executive assistant, that's their career. They are experienced in all those things. So their level of efficiency and productivity is going to be tenfold. And then you get to redirect and focus on things that bring you greater joy and satisfaction and shift the whole energetic components within your business and really have a ripple effect in a positive direction. And so investing in the right support, it really supports, to bring it back to burnout, the leader operating from a place of better alignment and and honoring that holistic, I talk about holistic success, the
Mhm.
personal and the professional. And we had a client start with us. He's in the trades, has a contractor firm, and again, working really, really long hours, just very burned out, and had been sort of running on the treadmill, not getting any momentum forwards, but just being just chronically exhausted, really burned out. And he's like, I can't get my business past this one point, and had a lot of trouble with employee retention, just a lot of turnover. And so I said to him, well, what's something you like to do for fun? He's like, I don't have fun anymore. Like I just work all the time. And I said, okay, what did you used to do for fun? And he said, well, I used to go mountain biking and I really love that. So I said, all right, we're going to schedule you 2 mornings a week. You're going to go mountain biking for an hour. And he goes, there's no way I can do that. But we did. And he did. And, you can imagine the effect that had. He was happier and he was working less hours. The business was able to make more money and sort of move the needle forwards. But his burnout started to recede and he was feeling more fulfilled and happier and calm. His family got to have him home for dinner. His employees were seeing a difference in how he was showing up. And we were able to remove all those things from his plate that he was drowning in and
Yeah.
not efficient in because that wasn't his area of expertise.
Oh, that's such a good example and so counterintuitive when you're in the midst
Yes.
of burnout, right? The one thing, that I wanted to, like, infuse into the conversation before we wrap it up is that the way in which you make your money, the way in which you're growing your business, and we've alluded to this a few times, the energy with which you are showing up is going to be mirrored back in what you're
Mhm.
experiencing, right? So if you are in a state of burnout, if you're in a state of frustration, if you're in a state of desperation, right? That is like the clients that are attracted to that
Mhm.
are going to mirror that back to you.
Yes.
And so it's maybe a little bit of a hard, and I'm saying this and I'm also gonna say that might be a hard pill to swallow if you're in a place that feels a little out of control right now.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily like medicine that you wanna hear. But it's so true, right? If you are getting clients from a place of, stress and fear and scarcity and burnout, right? Just all of that,
Mhm.
and, like, I can't take on more clients, but I need more clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
That that energy carries through, and
Yeah.
part of what we're saying here is that you have to shift how you're showing up, because when you can
Yeah.
show up, and you and I both have personal examples of this,
Yeah.
right?
We've talked about this. Yep.
If you can shift how you're showing up so that when you come to the table, when you come to a discovery call, when you come to a connection call, it truly is from a place of service, from a
Mhm.
place of sufficiency, from a place
Mhm.
of, I feel good and I just want you to feel good.
Mhm.
That energy,
Absolutely.
that is different. When it's from like, I am grounded, I feel good, I can help hold this feeling of peace with you as you elevate to it. That is
Yes.
a different energy. That brings different clients in the door.
Absolutely. And I can speak from experience about that. I mean, and in working with you, I mean, there have been you've supported me through periods of, we're all humans, right? Life happens and there's periods where you're exhausted, you're drained, you're showing up from a place of more desperation. Maybe the roof on your house needs to be replaced and that's a huge cost you weren't expecting, or something happens, or there's a plumbing emergency and any number of things. And suddenly you're in a place of more desperation, and that is affecting your business and who you're attracting and what you're manifesting. And as you said, it's counterintuitive, but that saying, to do something, to get something you've never had, you have to do something you haven't done. It's like, okay, if I keep running on this treadmill, grinding, hustling, from a place of desperation, I'm going to keep getting more of that. I'm
Yeah.
not moving forward. So it is really counterintuitive, but you have to kind of interrupt that signal, that conditioning, and do something different. And sometimes it is investing in, it really, I talk about, an investment mindset versus a cost mindset. It's not like, oh, what is this going to cost me? It's, this investment is going to change my business and my life. But it really is making that shift, and it can be so hard. And I've been there. I mean, being a business owner is tough. There's ups and downs. I mean, there's things that we don't even have control over, right? The economy can affect things. Other small businesses are affected, so it has a ripple effect. But how we show up and how we're manifesting, our mindset, all of that, our energy, it affects things. And so if, we can all teeter on the edge of burnout, but setting up camp there and normalizing it is something really important to avoid and be very mindful of. And there are so many resources to avoid that, and to have a plan in place and a strategy in place and a support system in place to avoid that and stay in a place of more holistic success sustainably, than kind of bouncing back and forth or just being in that chronic overwhelm and burnout, because that's also no way to live. And we all started a business because we love what we do, right? There's that emotional piece too. Like, I
Mhm.
started a business because I have a passion for what I do. And when you're feeling like you've lost that passion and you just have no will to move forward anymore, that's really an indicator that you're in burnout and it's time to bring on help and really shift things into a more positive place of feeling satisfied and having help. And I think there's this stigma too around like asking for help is a sign of weakness. But like I said before, it's actually a sign of real strength.
Oh gosh, we could go that was another route. We could, like, so dive down that rabbit hole of being open to receive.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, we could have a whole 'nother hour on that, because there is, right? If you're open to receiving help, if you're open to receiving assistance, that goes hand in hand with open to receiving more revenue, open to allowing more abundance to flow to you because it will then flow through you in a more, um, a more, like, positively charged way. That's the way I wanna put
Mhm.
that, so
Yes.
let's put
Yes.
it we'll put a pin in that. I think we could let's see,
That'll be 2.0.
yes, yeah, second conversation, but Hayden, if people want to have because you have literally have resources that people can tap into, right? Just go to your
Yes.
website and check in. Um, how can people find you? Where's the best place for them to kind of find some of those resources that you talk about?
Yes, well, you can Google Handled by Hayden and Co. or go to our website, which is www.handledbyhayden.co. You can email me directly, Hayden at handledbyhayden.co. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We also have a free resource that is 3 essential boundaries templates. It's a free download that is posted on our social media, templates that you can just download and implement right away, because that's a whole other conversation. But having really good boundaries as a leader around your business and your time is so important to not just avoid burnout, but also serving yourself and your clients optimally. So there's resources on our website and our social media, and anyone can reach out to me at any time by email. Very responsive. I have an autoresponder letting you know if I'm out of the office or not, but that's a great way to reach out as well by email.
And all of those resources will be in the show notes. So you can just check there, go straight to Hayden's website or to her social media and connect. And as always, if anything from this conversation sparked any ideas or any questions or, got you to think about receiving help in a new way or gave you ideas, we would absolutely love to hear that and whatever capacity, right? The thing that the reason why I love doing this podcast so much is because I get feedback from people saying, that, something helped spark a new idea or a new understanding for them. And that is like my heart just like fills up, it fills me up. So I love to hear that. And Hayden, thank you so much for spending this hour with me. I
You,
enjoyed
Hannah.
it so much. And we'll have to I want to hear from people. Do you want to hear more about being open to receive? How do we do that? Like,
Yes.
seriously, we can have a whole conversation about it.
Yes. And I offer a free consult too. So if someone wants to just brainstorm, a lot of times people think, I need help, but I don't even know what I need. Whether or
Mhm.
not we work together, it's a 30-minute call. I want to provide value and support you. So you can always reach out and we can have a chat.
Love it. Thank you so much, Hayden. I appreciate
My
you so,
pleasure.
so much.
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.